Hey there, everybody. So today we are going to discuss some economic changes that occur in Europe during the Second Industrial Revolution, and we're going to throw some agriculture in there as well. All right. Well, in general, what we're seeing is that income is going to go up, okay? And that is going to begin this kind of mass spending that I'll be discussing again in a later video. Britain and Germany, for instance, during the late 1800s will double their national incomes. Real wages in Britain will increase by 2/3 and in Germany by 1/3 from 1850 to 1900. So that is actual raw money that people have to spend. And it will also help that at the same time that food prices will go down. So that is going to help as well. So when you put all this thing, you're going to have more money, more spending, and businesses are going to get bigger. Now, the federal government, though, is going to start to get involved, okay? And the concept is to get involved via protection. You see, what happens is that local and national governments want to have their products sell as much as possible. But with industrialization having spread by this point across the entire world, they also understand that there are competitors out there. So what they start doing is the creation of tariffs, okay? A tariff is a tax on imports, okay? And the whole goal here is that what you do is that cost, so the import cost will go up. So if you look on the visual here, it's very complicated. So British made cloth normally costs $4 a roll. American made cloth costs $4 a roll. What the American government then does is pass a quote-unquote protective tariff of 25% on the British made item. So that British made cloth costs $5 in the United States. So now that might be better. People still might buy it anyway. I'm not going to lie. There are certain products that I purchase that I feel are of higher quality. So I buy them knowing that they're going to be a bit more expensive, but that's how I work. But then there are other products that I'll buy that are locally made because they are indeed less expensive than their foreign counterpart and are just as good. And so what we're starting to see is greater involvement with the federal government in economics, which we hadn't seen before, and this is going to continue on, okay? So you will then get the development of something known as a cartel, okay? So a cartel, or the way that cartels work, is that these are independent enterprises that work together to control prices and fix production quotas. It's very official. It sounds like that because I read it. Basically, what you're going to have is a variety of companies from behind the scenes will get together, specify what they're going to charge so they don't have to compete against each other. And then, unfortunately for us, the consumers, we don't get a lot of choices there, okay? We see these start to develop in Germany first, particularly in coal, steel, and the chemical industries will come together, and that will give them a short-term boom. But in all honesty, it is not good for long-term economics because it will slow the whole thing down. But this is a new development that we have during this particular time. What also goes along with this is the expanding size of factories. Okay, factories are just going to get so big we call them manufacturing plants. The biggest ones are in steel, machinery, heavy electrical equipment, and chemicals. And just to give you an idea how big they would get, by 1907, okay, Germany would have 879,000 factories that employ 1,000 people or more. Okay, so everything is becoming mechanized. Whatever we can do, we're going to put it into a factory. I talked about that last time. That's the impact of like Henry Ford. And of course, we're going to have tools and interchangeable parts. and it's going to be super efficient. This is a depiction of the BASF or BASF factory in Germany. This company is actually the largest producer of chemicals in the entire world today. This gives you an idea of how old this company is, and you can see just how massive that would be in just the 1800s. I mean, it's absolutely staggering. Now, something else that we have to understand are fluctuations in the economy. You see, early in the 1800s, everything's going good. We're making these things, and unfortunately, we're going to have periods of economic distress. Okay, and we're going to have economic crashes, depressions, recessions, any other essions you can think of. And what we are exposed to now at this time is what we call the business cycle. And on the right, you see a business cycle, and basically that you have times of strong economies where you have a peak up here, and then eventually it's going to go down into a recession or a depression. But normally what ends up happening is when the economy recovers, as you see here, it recovers at a higher level than it was previously. Because basically what you're going to do is you're going to get slumps, okay? For a variety of different reasons. I'm not going to get into all of them, but basically people start to buy less. Okay, that's where we're getting into, like right here. Look at the mouse on the little diagram. Okay, as a result, companies are going to make less money, and then as a result, they have to fire workers, lower wages, or increase their prices. But because people can't afford it, it's going to drop, drop, drop. Production is going to go down. People are going to struggle making ends meet. And eventually, we are going to get to a bottom point where you have skyrocketing employment. You remember at this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, you don't have any protections for any of that type of stuff. And then basically you have to figure out a way to stabilize everything, start to increase demand again, maybe create some new products, cheaper products, but still good quality, and we're going to come back up this way. But that's something that we get with capitalism now, is that there are peaks and troughs, and that's just how it's going to work. Okay, in Europe, basically from 1873 to 1895 will be a dip, and then from 1895 to 1914, it's going to be a huge boom time. So it goes up and down. Britain now at this time, interestingly enough, they're kind of the same old, same old. You know, Britain was, of course, the innovator of all of the stuff in the first industrial revolution, but in this time, they're just going to kind of slow down. They don't really get into new industries of like oil and chemicals. They'll get there in steel, but it's going to take them a little while. And you see them become a bit less entrepreneurial. The vibe of Britain was like, look, the way that things were done in the past, this made us rich, this made us super powerful, and we're just going to stick with it, okay? Doesn't mean that Britain's going to fall off the face of the earth or anything. They're still the largest empire in the world, or actually that the world had ever seen at that point, but other countries are now going to get an opportunity, and one of those countries was Germany. Now, Germany is going to begin mass industrialization after their unification, okay? Really, 1870 on, they are going to be just in the zone, okay? They are going to be very embracing of change, and they're all going to be about efficiency, okay? They want to do things in efficient ways, so not only do they have growth, but they have, like, smart growth. Now, interestingly enough, the one thing that Cartels did is because Cartels were making so much money, they actually got banks to invest more in businesses. So that is a good thing because you're going to get more capital that flows around that can help people out. Germany is also going to be really the guys in the front of the new fields. Things like organic chemistry and electrical engineering. They are going to develop some of the world's first research labs. That was actually pioneered by Thomas Edison in New Jersey, in which he would have all these guys work together and maybe take credit for work that's not his. We can talk about that later. But we're going to churn out things for businesses to use. And so what you'll actually see is that nowadays you'll see many big-time businesses have what we call R&D departments, research and development, for not only new products, but whether it's chemicals or new science that can help them. You're also going to get greater development in education and higher education. For instance, Germany is going to be one of the first nations that will increase education levels to like where you can go and get a doctoral degree. And so you have these highly trained people, you've got research labs that they can work, and Germany's going to be at the forefront. Now, from Europe, we're going to look at it kind of in two zones. You're going to have the industrial West and then just like the not so industrial. So, in the West, you're going to have places like Great Britain, France, Western Austria-Hungary, Germany, and Northern Italy. These are going to be the places where you have massive industry, you have higher standards of living. You'll see a lot of these advances in healthcare that I've already talked about and that we've talked about in class. And you're going to have large rates of education and improving education. The not so industrial will be southern Italy, eastern Austria-Hungary, the Balkan states, Spain, Portugal, and Russia. Most of these areas will be staying mostly rural. They will be agricultural based, which isn't bad, but it's lesser income. The education is going to be much weaker there. These places just aren't going to have the money necessary to invest in education, although they should, because you have a better educated populace. You tend to actually get more cool stuff. And in many ways, they'll just be used for raw goods or specific goods, not the expanding industry like olive oil coming out of Greece or pigs coming out from Serbia or wheat coming out of Russia. And this is going to cause some tension later on, as well as some problems when some fighting happens. And we'll get to that. But we definitely have a split in Europe at this time because of economic changes. Now, while that's going on, agriculture is going to change, and we're going to see some interesting things happen because you have a need to respond here. Now, what were agricultural issues? Well, the thing is, with all these new forms and chemicals that are lasting, well, not necessarily the chemical, I'll talk about chemical fertilizers in a minute, but with better transportation and more crops available, food prices crash. So these people aren't making as much money. Then with new machines, like on the right, that is your first actual plow, or sorry, not a plow, it's your tractor plow. So a tractor, which of course is crucial in farming today, with more machines that reduces the need for labor. So a lot of these people have jobs or need jobs. And even the ones that have jobs aren't particularly highly paid. So what can you do? Well, we're going to have some massive changes. First, you're going to get the use of chemical fertilizers. Now, some of this will be good because it will result in larger yields, although there will be an environmental impact that we will be discussing later, but lots of chemicals getting into water and the ground long term, not so good. You also have farmers come together to form farming cooperatives in which they will work together to purchase equipment, and each farmer in the cooperative might specialize in a different crop, and then they can split profits, and it allows them to grow and actually pay their workers more, so that's good. Some nations realize that they need to specialize in particular agricultural goods, and by creating really high-end stuff and a demand for it, they're able to get more money. So, for instance, in Denmark, they're going to focus on the dairy industry, things like eggs and butter and cheese. Spain and Italy will focus on grapes and wine, and the Mediterranean nations will actually really focus on things like fruit. And as a result, even though you get price declines, the working classes will be able to eat more, so there's positive for health, but by having more to sell, you can still create enough income to survive. And so you're going to see the changes that will help these guys, survive in an area that before, they were really starting to falter. But don't misinterpret this. Yes, there's some big wealthy farmers, and you'll get big cattle hurdles or herders and stuff like that. But I said hurdles. Huh? I'm a track coach. But in the end, the industry is really where the money's going to be at. And then as a result, we are just going to have this massive world economy that will develop. Okay, so industry is going to spread out of Europe to places like the United States, Japan, and even Russia eventually, as well as South America. And, just some examples. And as a result, we're going to be shipping things across the world with these steam ships that have better power. On the right, of course, that's a modern day. You should all know how big one of these shipping containers is, and you see this as a modern day port today. So things like, Nitrates are going to come out of Chile, and then people are going to pick up coffee in Brazil, iron from Algeria, sugar from Indonesia. The banks are then going to get behind all of this. They're going to finance it, and then they're going to open up um, more branches, and you're going to get banking is going to go international, even bigger now. We'll talk about specific companies later, like HSBC and others. European goods will then go to all of these other places as well, especially their finished goods. And, with that, Europe is then going to look at kind of a next step. And what we're going to see here in the late 1800s with all this expansion and all this economic growth, you are going to see the Europeans then react and honestly conquer the world. All right, guys, so make sure you take your time, rewatch this if you have to, and I'll talk to you soon.